Michael, we'd love to hear this infamous Will Geer story. You were at your alma mater talking.
Yeah, we shared a common point, an intersection in a fraternity, although he was at the University of Chicago 50 years earlier, and I was at Auburn University. And I had written an address for that fraternity, which I delivered in Muncie, Indiana, and they recorded. Didn't know about the recording part, but then they started to play it for distinguished alumni, and they were out doing interviews with members, alumni of that fraternity in the entertainment industry. Dean Jagger, who won the Academy Award for Brigham Young, Chester Gould, who created Dick Tracy, and Will Geer, who at that time was the grandfather on the Waltons. They played the thing for Will, and he says in his inimitable style, "Do you know how to get in touch with this fella?" And they said, "Yeah, he's at Auburn." He said, "Call him." And so I get up, it's literally the evening of my last college final, and I went to the phone, and he said, "Son, this is Will Geer. I think you should try acting before the corporate structure snaps you up." And I said, "I don't know anything about it, Mr. Geer." He said, "Come to California, I'll work with you." And I was, needless to say, I knew who he was, but I was taken aback. I had no idea. They prefaced the conversation a little bit and introduced me to him. But I thought, may I call you back? Because I'd never been on the stage, Karen. I had I'd been a leaf once in the first grade, no lines, that was it. And I thought, And it was an interesting time in the history of our country and culture, and that Vietnam was still raging, and that's not true. It was winding down, which is why I was able to go to California. I didn't have to go to Vietnam. And I thought, it's too rare an opportunity. I don't want to look back and go, what if? And I knew I wanted out of the South. So I went out there, and I knew nothing. And people said, "Try it, you won't make it. Try it, you won't make it." Wow, you don't know what you're doing. You won't make it. And after a while, I got a good resentment about it. And you can do a lot of good on a good resentment. So I just held on, But Ellen, his daughter Ellen, was extraordinary. She was the original ingenue for Tyrone Guthrie. And Ellen was the primary director at Theatricum Botanicum. And she taught me how to act. She just took me by the hand and taught me how to act. And it was not an easy task. I couldn't read. I didn't read well. I stammered and stuttered. And, if you walk into an audition and you're trying to pick up a line, that didn't work well. So I had to learn to read. And I would work construction during the day, and I would sit in the bathtub at night and read Time magazine until it sounded like human speech, and I could mechanically pick words off a page. And I'm probably still a better reader than I am an actor because of that.
Well, going back now, I understand you had maybe had plans to become a carpenter. That was maybe something that you thought you would be doing. Is that right? Where you're toward the end of your college.
Well, I actually had applied to the University of Virginia in an MBA program. I was an economics major at Auburn, and that was good for going to graduate school, not good for anything else. And I had applied, I'd been up for an interview. I honestly doubt I would have ever been accepted there. They had really, really, really smart people applying, and I could do the work, but I didn't have the credentials. But when that offer came up, I called and said, "May I reapply in 2 years, or a year?" And they said, "Yeah, you can." But what happened was, when I got here, the only way I could make a living was as a carpenter. My grandfather had been a brick mason, so we were okay with our hands. Our family was okay with our hands. And I started, working as a carpenter and a construction worker and stuff like that. And then got, better at it over time, and supported myself in New York, as a carpenter and a bicycle messenger. And so that's how the carpentry part of it came in. And I always liked, because acting is, it's so hard to kind of see what you're doing. You can't see what you're doing. I mean, you can see it in reflection later, but you can't when you're doing it. Carpentry is wonderful because the tolerances are so specific. It's a great anecdote, to what we do, I think, and it forces you to be specific, and that's not a bad thing for an actor either.
So going back to that almost spite-fueled passion, which I think is great, because you say, yes, people said, "Hey, go ahead, go," quote, "follow your bliss, you won't make it, but do it anyway." Mm-hmm. They said it back home, they said it here. how does one keep that engine going without becoming too bitter? Because I think that's a great, we hear it all the time, whatever creative endeavor, oh, well, you can't really make money at it, but yeah, try it.
Yeah. You know, like our instrument, in a lot of ways, it's a muscle, and you keep strengthening it. And once you invest in that, you know, when you set your course or strike the canvas that you're going to stick, you begin to reinforce that muscle. And hopefully the business responds enough, or opportunity responds enough, that you're engaged in the industry. I call it a membrane. And for a long time we slide through it and we get to visit and do a little work, and then we get pushed back out. So it takes a long time to get inside the membrane and stay inside the membrane. But in answer to your question about the bitterness, you know, it's filled with disappointment. It just is. Every time I really want a job, and it's the hardest thing as an actor, because when I really want a job, I squeeze the sawdust out of the end of the bat. I try too hard, and I get in my own way. And one of the first things they say in acting school is leave yourself alone. Don't get in your own way. Trust yourself, you know. And it's hard not to be. Hopefully, you move from bitterness to disappointment, or resentment to disappointment, and from disappointment to engagement, and engagement to satisfaction. But that's a lot of moving, you know, and it's never a pure line. I think it slides back and forth, to be honest.
So when you feel yourself sliding more toward maybe some of the negative aspects, how do you get yourself back on track? Still with that drive, still, okay, I'm going to prove that I can do this, especially in the beginning.
Oh, wow, in the beginning. You know, I euphemistically say you bite the stick and hang on, and whatever comes to shake you off, you just clamp down. And honestly, I think it's more, you know, about your stubbornness in the beginning, because you know, there'll be disappointments, there'll be people that mislead you a bit, or at least you hear what you want to hear. Maybe they're not misleading, but you know, we do this on faith, and we do it on hope, and not a lot of food, and how you get through that. Personally, and in the beginning, it was good to have other things to do during the week. I mean, to be able to work carpentry, to be able to, you know, to physically exert myself at something. I think that helped break up some of the noise in my own head. I think that's what you have to find, is something to ameliorate that noise. Because if you don't, and it gets louder and louder and louder, it's crippling. And I don't care if it's the bitterness or the, you know, the fantasy of what it's supposed to be. There's a great old saying. I think there's a wonderful songwriter named Eliza Gilkison, and in one of her songs she says, sometimes the big dream has to die for the little dream to thrive. And I think that's true for a lot of us. We come out with this big dream about what it's supposed to look like. And once you can let go of that, your little dreams can begin to thrive. And some of that bitterness and resentment and stuff can go away. You can just go.
I understand back in 2004, I believe you were interviewed for the LA Times with, is it Mary McNamara? And she said something about having that talk, that a lot of people in the industry have that talk behind closed doors with a spouse, significant other.
The conversation.
The conversation, thank you.
Which basically means the conversation about when you stop, when you give it up, when you move on, when do you take a different job, recover, you know, whatever that one means to different people. But it usually is an exit. It's usually, okay, I did what I could do and now I have to move on. And we were in a little bit of an unusual situation that I had my children really late, and I had one daughter and then immediately had two more. We had 3 children in 18 months. So I had learned how to do the industry for myself, and then I learned how to do it for Mary and me, the two of us together. And I thought I was getting a handle on Mary and me and Ella. But when Annie and Molly got here, it was a very, very different responsibility. I mean, I got pushed into adulthood, and they needed what they needed, and it was my job to make sure that they had that, you know, in the most fundamental of ways. And it happened at the same time that the dynamic of the industry was changing pretty dramatically in terms of pay. They were reducing all of us to scale plus 10. You know, in the old days, there was a pretty healthy quote system, and you were paid commiserate to your experience and to the last contribution that you made to a film. So you expected, with seniority or with experience or with hopefully talent, for your salary to increase as it would in any world. But the corporations decided, you know what, if Michael O'Neill doesn't take that job, there's a guy right behind him. So offer him this, and if he doesn't want it, tell him to move on. Well, as a young man, you can do scale plus 10. You can, you know, but you can't when you have a mortgage and 3 children and a wife and responsibilities. You have to work all the time. And so we had to have the conversation, and that's what Mary McNamara, that LA Times writer, I thought I was meeting her for, you know, some like career thing, and we were sitting over coffee, and she says, "Do you ever have the conversation?" And I went, "Oh my gosh, oh please, is that where we're going with this?" You know? And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, here we go." And it was, I honestly, I thought that was the end of my career. I thought when I got honest about what the dynamics were and why we were getting what I felt was pushed out of the industry economically, it would be it. We'd be done. And Mary and I talked, my wife Mary and I talked about that, and to her credit, she said, "Then we'll be done. Then we'll do what we have to do." And she really had my back. So I think I told the truth. I tried to. And it turned out to be a remarkable turning point in my career, in that it was quite the opposite of what I thought. I was not invited to leave the industry. I was invited to get back inside. I mean, people called and offered me jobs. You know, it just, and also, you know, there's the element of publicity in our industry. If there are 50 guys in my group, all of a sudden I'm one of the top 5 or 6 guys in my group. I got moved up to the top 10% because here I am in the Los Angeles Times, you know, in the Sunday section, calendar section on a Thursday. So there were a lot of aspects to it. At least I think that's, you know, my interpretation of it. But I give tremendous credit to Mary McNamara. That was a compelling, she could have hurt me with that. I mean, it could have come out like a guy who's like, I'm bitter. And I wasn't bitter about it. I just said, this is what it is. This is what it looks like. And that's what she wrote. And I got to tell you, the feedback that I got, both from our peers and colleagues, was extraordinary. For a long, long time, I couldn't walk on a studio lot and somebody said, wouldn't say, I appreciate you telling what it was. But I got calls from guys that I had been at Circle Rep with in New York that had gotten out of the business. They were in Ohio or North Carolina or Florida. And to a person, they all said, "Michael, thank you. I thought it was me. I thought I didn't have what it took any longer." They didn't realize that the bottleneck had narrowed financially. So they simply couldn't make a living any longer. But they thought it was a failing of theirs, not a dynamic in the industry that shifted. Which gave me great solace about the whole thing, if anything did. But and not just that, I had, you know, iron workers and people who worked on factory floors. I had people contact me from, you know, businesses that had been bought up by bigger businesses, and all of a sudden they were squeezed out. And there was a thing happening in the dynamic of the gross national economy, or whatever we want to call it. But the middle got squeezed pretty hard.
Let's talk about people who go back home, quote unquote, to regroup. I heard an interview with Danny McBride. He talked about being in his mid-20s. I think he came out here, LA hit him pretty hard. He went back home to Virginia to regroup. Then he came back. When you go back to regroup, what would you recommend to other people? If they're in the same shoes, maybe they're done with the industry, maybe they want some time off.
Well, my experience is that when you go away, and it doesn't just have to be home, I would recommend to a lot of people they go live in Paris for a year. You know, regroup that way, recharge. You know, just fill your senses and your sight with, you know, the lusciousness of the world. wherever that is for you. But don't not allow yourself to do it because you're afraid you're going to miss an audition. You know, you're afraid, oh, I'm going to miss a job. If I leave, I won't be ready. And the truth of the matter is, what most people find is that their peers that they left are pretty much right in the exact same place they were when the person left a year earlier. So I just want people to not to think that they're missing something. They're not, they're adding something. Now, how you maintain touch with the businesses, I say go back and refill yourself craft-wise. I mean, there's a lot that we're responsible for doing in terms of finding things that carbonate us. And home is a pretty rich place for that, both good and bad, you know. There's a wonderful acting teacher, Larry Moss, and Larry would always say to us that your mineral gold, the mineral, is your wound. That's what you want to work from. And most of us in this life try to cover that wound up. And it's the actor's job to touch it and reveal it. And, you know, home for most of us was where that wound started. So in that regard, I think I would go back and write, be awake, walk, take great long walks, you know, and understand and look at vast spaces, look at expanses, look at the ocean or look at the forest or whatever it is, because we need a sensation, the sensation that there's something larger than we are. We can get very, very small in our, you know, world.
Michael, have you ever had a bad audition?
Oh yes, oh yes, just awful. Oh my. And you know, the terrible thing is that stays with you. What we do is based on confidence anyway. You go in the room and you're confident, but when you just miss it entirely, it takes about 3 or 4 more auditions to get your confidence back up. And I've also been hired off bad auditions. You know, where I walked out of the room going, "Oh, Mickey, what did you do? What have you? What were you thinking?" You know, and it's the ride home where you think of the right thing to say too late, or the right moment. Oh, now I understand that moment. And you know, I don't think it's any different for any of us. The guy who's starting out or the guy who's had tremendous success and is a star. I think there's the nature of what we do it haunts a bit. Yeah, I've had some pretty bad ones. Oof. I wish I could think of one. I'm sure I've, you know, in terms of the specifics of it or block it out. I do remember going in on CSI, with the original CSI, and they had a guy who was who worked the desk at some, you know, ad agency or something. I can't remember what it was, but he was angry. And they said, "We really want you to be angry." Well, you know, nobody has to make me angry. They just have to take the layer off the anger that's already there. So when I gave him the anger, I could feel the room kind of leaning back. And needless to say, I didn't get that job. That didn't go very well. You know, and then there are the times you just chew up the furniture and you can't stop yourself. You know, I often will say now, because I'm seasoned enough to do it, when they stop me or when they start to give me direction before I've had a chance to do what what my instincts have brought me in the room with, let me do one. Let me get this out of my system so that I can hear you well enough to adjust. But right now I've got this, I got to get this out. And they'll let me do it, you know. And most people lose sight of the fact that it's their audition. We still go in the room thinking it's the director and producer and writer's audition. It doesn't belong to them, it belongs to us. I can't do anything about their side of the table. I can make no decisions on their side. I only have one side of the table I can work, but I better own it. I better make sure it's my side of the table. So if I don't like something in the middle of it, or, you know, I need to, did you guys see that? Hey, can we start over? You know what I mean? You do what you have to do. And, but it's mine now. And so I don't mind saying, let me get this out. And then I'll try to do whatever you want. Because if I try to do what they want before I've gotten mine out, it's a mess. It's a train wreck.
So what's your definition, though, of a bad audition? Not just, aside from not getting the part, of course, is it a lack of chemistry with the person you're reading for? Is it somehow the lines were delivered wrong. What do you consider, quote, bombing an audition in your mind?
Well, at the high end of the scale, if I can walk out of the room and do what I intended to do, but also surprise myself, then I've had a really good audition. There's something about that surprise, you know, that I was there, I was present, you know, it happened. But on the other end, when you try to force something, or I'm not listening, I'm not hearing the other person, it has less to do with what they're reading as it does with my ability to hear them. So I'm not really working off of anything. That's not a very good audition because I'm doing everything in one. You know, I think it's, you go in there and you have, it's not that you've slotted it, but you have a sense of what your instinct is about the role. And if you go in there and miss that, somehow or another tighten up, you miss it, then you leave unsatisfied. You just, you feel like, oh my God, I gotta get in the car and I've got to drive 50 miles, which is going to feel like 150 miles, because I've got all this chatter in my head about what I didn't do. And you know, I don't know that ever goes away. You know, I've had those. I've had them. Because I'm out of the city a lot, I tape a lot now. I have to tape and send in. And I'm rarely happy with that process because I like the room so much. The feedback is immediate in the temperature of the room. You can see it in front of you, and I like that. It makes me sharper. It raises the stakes, and I can do it for the camera 6 times and, you know, start looking at it going, oh, let's try that again, you know. And then you do it 50 times, and you're like, maybe we should go back to the second one we did, because that one's a lot better. I don't know that I'm answering your question, I'm sorry, but it's just a sense of being caught and not giving what you know you can give. That's always a frustration. Some of these feel really precious, and particularly if you're not auditioning very much, and I think that's the hardest thing for a young actor, is they only get one audition every, you know, 2.5 or 3 months or 4 months. And you can't help it. You go in with it being too precious. You have to trick yourself that it's really not. And how successful you are or aren't with that trick, you know, it does a lot to you in that moment, you know. You've worked in your bedroom, your bathroom, you got up in the middle of the night, you woke somebody up, you try to get them back down, and then, you know the drill, you over and over and over again, and you find it. And then you go in and you don't deliver it. And you're just like, I want another bite. Sorry, you know, that train left the station. Done that a lot in my life.
Let's talk about the flip side. Imagine you go into a room, you feel that immediacy, you feel that energy. They love you, great rapport, you don't get it. What's your process? You call, you follow up maybe with someone. I know a lot of times they don't let you know.
You don't get feedback. You really don't. And I had a wonderful director in New York, a woman named Amy Saltz, and I did a play with her in New Haven at Yale Rep. And I couldn't get thrown in jail. Nothing was working, and I felt like I was auditioning really poorly. And so I went to Amy and I said, Amy, will you work with me on an audition? I don't know, I can't get hired. She says, let me do you one better. I'm casting a play at the American Place Theater. I want you to come sit on our side of the table and watch these actors come through an audition for us. And so I did that. And I was shocked, Karen. I was absolutely shocked, because the lesson that Amy was trying to teach me is that 98% of the time it's not about me. It's about what they need in the project, what they need in the part. I watched actors come in that were not ready to work. You could see them apologize for being there. Learned a great lesson from that. I watched actors come in that didn't want the job. They were afraid if they got the job, they would have to do it. They were apologetic about being there. I watched actors come in that were remarkable in the role, just remarkable. I mean, you looked at it and went, oh, that's your guy. That's you. And they didn't get the job because they didn't fit with the vision of the project and the ensemble that they were trying to put together. It was a great performance. Didn't work for this. So it really wasn't about that actor, and they had no way of knowing it. If I could have gotten up and run out of the room and said, I can't tell you how good you were and you're not going to get this job. Understand it's not about you. And I couldn't really do that, you know. And then I watched actors walk in that were utterly professional, and they did their work, and it was good and it was solid, and they said thank you and turned and walked out. And I learned that too. I learned better to have them have to reach to you to keep you in the room than you to linger too long. Get up and go. They'll stop you if they need you. And that was a great lesson for me. I found out that it really wasn't about me. I just need to go back and do my work and trust that would be all night. It would be enough, you know, keep going.
That's interesting. That's like that psychology of keep them wanting more.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know, I've done the thing where you tried to be nice and you tried to be winsome. Oh yeah, you guys doing all right? And they're ready to get on. They got 7 more guys that they have to see. And I really liked your last project, you know. And they're sitting there thinking, how are we going to get this big lug out of the room? And I'm sitting here thinking, if I can sit here long enough, I'll win them over. And it doesn't work that way. They're doing a job and I'm doing a job. Let's just do our job. And if I did especially if I nailed the audition, I'm out of there. They're gonna have to catch me by the coattail. I'm done, I'm gone. Because I did what I was supposed to do. I did my job. And I can't do it any better, I can't do it anymore. I had an experience with the unit, with David Mamet, and I was pretty excited about auditioning for David. And I knew the character. It was a guy, I knew the places in Georgia that the guy had hunted. I knew what his military bearing was. It turned out that he was a man that was in a wheelchair. He had been paralyzed in a helo accident in Grenada, based on a true character. And when I was a kid walking home from football practice, there was a guy named Mr. Matlock that would hear me whistling coming down the street. He'd been in a railroad accident and lost his legs. And he would always come out. I was 7 years old. He would come out and he and I would talk. I would just stop there on the corner and talk to him. And he was fascinating to me because he smoked a pipe. And you know, as a kid, you're watching everything. Well, the ash would fall out of the pipe and burn a hole in his trousers. But of course, his legs were wooden, so he never felt it. But I just unconsciously studied everything about him. So when I had to play the guy in the wheelchair, when I sat down, I was Mr. Matlock. I was the guy in the chair. And they didn't get the camera on. Karen, the camera, it was a new girl who was working it. And moreover, I had taken pages from the script and I said, I appreciate these sides that you've asked me to read, and I'll do that, but the character's over here in this scene. And I gave David a copy of the sides, and I gave the casting director a copy of the sides, and I said, may I read this? And they said, David, you know, Mamet, he'll play. He said, sure. And the casting director, because David said sure, said, sure. And, but they didn't get the camera on. And I was 2 hours away heading to Palm Springs for a charity golf event. And my agents called and said, they didn't get the camera on, will you come back? And I said, no. I did what I could do. They were in the room. It either happens or it doesn't, but I can't do it any better. So I literally got out of there and didn't look back.
Dallas Buyers Club. You tell us one of your favorite stories from being on set.
Well, one of my favorites was that I didn't recognize Matthew when I walked into the room. I was finishing a film in Dallas and had come back to LA. I was on my way home to Birmingham to see my family for the first time in about 2.5 months. And I got a call from my agents when I landed in Houston and say they wanted to reroute me to New Orleans, that I'd been offered this role in the Dallas Buyers Club, but I needed to be there the next day. And I said, Mitchell, he said in the first place, and he never does this, he said, say yes. And I said, do me a favor, I'll read the script on the next leg from Houston to Birmingham, and I'll call you when I land, but I gotta get home, I gotta see my kids. And he said, okay, but they're gonna turn you right around and you're gonna go back to New Orleans. And the last thing he said was, say yes. So, because he knew the project. And when I got there, because I was drawn in a little bit late, there were a lot of moving parts. And there's this wonderful, crazy French-Canadian director, Jean-Marc Vallée. I adored working with him. I'll be forever grateful for the notes that he gave me, because he gave my character dimension that I might have missed. I was stepping in quickly to something, but when I walked into the hospital room the first time to work with Matthew, I was like, "When's he coming in?" You know, and of course he's more than ready. He's standing over there, but he had lost so much weight that he was unrecognizable to me. So when we started the scene, I'm still waiting for McConaughey to come in, and he's there. And you know, it's one of those things that kind of throw you in the moment when you finally realize, uh-oh, we're going, and you better catch up. So it actually helped me, because we were in the throes of it before I had an opportunity to get nervous about it. He was wonderful in the role. I mean, I was on an airplane once with Al Pacino. I did a film called Sea of Love with him, and we were flying to Toronto to rehearse. And he was talking about John Gielgud in a film, and he said, he's gotten free. And I didn't know what that meant, but I knew Pacino knew what it meant. And moreover, the way he said it, there was a sense of reverence about the notion that an actor had gotten free. Now, John Gielgud's been doing this for a long time, and so had Al Pacino. So the thing was, he was saying about his performance, he's gotten free. Well, I saw that on McConaughey. He was free. Any impulse, any thought, any movement, any moment, it was like, whew, he was free to do whatever came to him in that instant. Whatever he was playing off of, whatever preparation he had, he was utterly free with it. And I thought, we're into something special here. We're into something really special here. And the other thing that I liked about it was that I'd really never met Jared Leto until the premiere, because he never came out of character. So I met her, but I didn't get to really talk with him until, you know, much later. And I love that, you know, this sense of, it's the only film that I've ever worked on that didn't have a grip package. There was no lighting. It was all done existing light only. And there were scenes where this wonderful director was running around just torch lighting the way with profanity in French, with his camera on his shoulder going, we gotta get this, we gotta, you know, however you say that in French. Allez, 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 allez. And his crew was pretty remarkable. They were accustomed to his, you know, his speed of pace. And just to watch that, to see things happen, we never went back to our trailer, ever. You put your clothes on in the morning and you better be ready, because we were on the fly. And you know, some of it was first thought, best thought, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. But I had great respect for what Matthew and Jared were doing, and Jennifer. I mean, and Stephen Zahn, what a character he is. Oh my God, I got to hang out with him a bit. He's just an incredibly funny man, you know. And I was in New Orleans. That's nice. New Orleans is nice. Good food, probably the heaviest I've ever been on a film, in that film, because all that food was so good. But it was a great experience.
So going back to being free, is that getting out of your own way? That goes back to,
I think so.
Where does that come from?
Probably commitment. Probably just a commitment and a belief and a trust that you've got it. Go, you know. You know, there's a wonderful old saying in our business: if you're falling, dive. And I was watching guys dive, you know, and it creates, you know, it kind of creates an atmosphere. You go, yeah, me too. I want to play too. And I really thought in the first part of the film that I had that. You know, I think I got caught up in it. I thought I got a little, you know, one-dimensional late in the film. You know, and did what I could do on the day.
You know the saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, stuff rolls downhill. Cleaning it up
yes,
for you.
It does.
Do you think that when you sense that a director is allowing people to be free, and it sounds like this man is very free, that it rolls downhill, and then others adopt that?
Yeah, I do. And you know, one of the first scenes I had, he came in, I was jamming, I was trying to learn really, really quickly. I haven't had to learn that quickly since the West Wing, because things were fluid and really well done, but fluid. And he came in, I had learned the pages that were, that I'd been given. Well, he came in just before we were going to go roll them, speed, action, with new pages. And so he and I talked it out in the next hospital room, and he trusted me to go, you're good, go ahead. Now we had not, we didn't really have a shorthand. We were just, and I was able to say, but wait, this one little thing right here, let's tell the audience something they don't know. So let's, and he was amenable to me contributing as well. And yet he always said, make sure you keep him human. Make sure you maintain his sense of humor. Make sure you keep him human. And that was a great note for me, because it would have been very easy to just have been this stern, bureaucratic, I'm the Food and Drug Administration, you can't come in, and it enlivened the character for me, but it did roll downhill. It started with him and it rolled downhill, and fortunately for me, it ran into me.
I know you've done a lot of television. You tell us, what is the typical day like for an actor on set?
Nerves in the morning. You show up to work. I much prefer getting there early. I like to be there, right after the second AD or whoever's running base camp is just, opening it up. It helps me to come and land. Plus, the drives out here, it's much easier to do at 5 o'clock in the morning than it is at 7:30. So I'd rather bite the bullet and get there really early, and grab a little coffee or breakfast, and then go over what I am doing again, and also check those new pages, because they come in with sides in the trailer, and I found a number of times that the sides that I learned and studied have been changed that morning. So I don't want to surprise. I want to have an opportunity to digest that. I'll get in my wardrobe and I'll go see hair and makeup, and the makeup trailer is a fascinating central nexus for everything. I always say the last people you want to piss off are the makeup trailer, hair and makeup. You don't want to do that, because everything is going through there. They know everything. You can get a good reputation there, or you can get a bad reputation there. So let's go in, let's make nice, let's see them, let's listen to them, because, and they're colorful and they're funny and they're taking care of us. They're trying to put the best foot forward. I always ask, I ask for two things, and they're always gracious about giving it to me. And I always quote the Michael Caine line, because he said it to me when we were working on secondhand lines, when they asked me if I wanted mascara. And he leaned over in the makeup chair and he says, if they can't see your eyes, you might as well be doing radio. And I said to the makeup person, I'd really like mascara, please. So, learning from the master. But you come out of there, and then I usually try to just sit and relax and touch things. If I'm still needling a scene, I'll go back and needle it a little bit right then, because then they're going to come and get me. And when I get to the set, I always try to make friends with the camera guys. They're the guys to me. For one thing, they're salt of the earth, and they see it first. And I find myself honestly checking with them. I'll look and see if they got a tape going. You know what I mean? Because if I see a concern or something on them, then I retool a little bit. And if we've worked together for a while, I'll say, Tom, how was that? He'll go. Or ask for another one. So I think it's important to have allies on the set and really respect what those guys do. They're remarkable crews, and they work so much harder than I work. I like to get a sense of who they are, the property people, and the people who are looking after us, and the exchanges are happening. And do you have the gun? Yeah, I got the gun. Can we look at it? Can I feel it in my hand? Sure. And then what it does for me more than anything else it allows me to create a space that I can work in. Usually I'm a guest on the television show. So if I can very quickly ask one of the leads about their process or just express an interest in them, because the truth of the matter is they're doing a lot of heavy lifting. They just need to know they can be comfortable with me. And then they're willing for me to do my job, which is to add or take off some of the weight that they're having to carry. I think that's the character actor's job. We help them deliver it. And I make a concerted effort, and mostly it's selfish, because all it does is creates a comfortable space for me to work in, so that when I've got to do that, I can be relaxed, I can be part of the family, they can trust me, and we go. And you shoot your scenes, and between scenes you go back and refresh on the next scene that you've got coming up, and really try to jettison the last one, let it go. There's not time to needle and mull over, and just keep doing that until the end of the day. Go home, get rest, drink a lot of water, and get up and do it again the next day.
It sounds like then you're building a mini rapport with everyone you come in contact with, whether it's craft services or hair and makeup.
Yeah, I think it's that, and I think it's that I have a strong desire to make sure that they know they're appreciated for what they do. Now, what am I? I'm a character actor showing up as a guest, but they're supporting what I do in a tangible and an intangible way. So if I can let them know, my God, that was a nice meal, I really appreciate that, because we move through so fast. Things are happening so fast on a set. Time is money, and I have such great regard for the people who do it and support it. Those crews, When I had an interesting experience when I did Grey's Anatomy, because I was badly damaged. Their character was badly damaged, I should say. But and they all left me alone. There was that 1,000-yard stare that you get into, and they knew that I had to go back in. But every once in a while, a grip would walk by and just put his hand on my shoulder. My God. To have that kind of care or camaraderie, or just someone say, I'm with you. I know this is painful what you're doing. I appreciate it. They can have any award they want. I don't know that anyone's ever going to feel better than that moment of having one of your colleagues, one of the guys that's humping who knows how much cable or light or trying to make you look good, just put a hand on your shoulder. That one, I'll be forever grateful for that. And I do think, and for young actors going in, you just need to try to find a space that you can work in. Some people are open to you. Gosh, when I first came out here, Kathy Baker came up to me and welcomed me to her set. Thank you so much for joining us. Old school. They used to see that a lot. Mark Harmon. Hell, Harmon brought me coffee. He's #1 on the call sheet. And we know one another, and I'm proud to be able to call Mark my friend, but he's #1 on the call sheet. He's bringing me walking across the lot to bring me a cup of coffee. That's old school. You're not going to see that as much as in the old days. But you can still, you can just extend yourself, and if it's not reciprocated, it's not about you. They're thinking about something, they're working on something, or there's a lot of pathology in our business. I've always said, if you got to be 40 feet tall on screen to be seen, there's pathology in play, present company included. So, let them have what they need, and if they can't reciprocate, then keep your palms open, do your job.
Over 100 acting credits, 30 years. How are you not only enduring, not just hanging on, but thriving? How's that happening?
I think I like it more now than I did earlier. I think I like it a lot more now. I just have such regard for our colleagues. It's a joy to show up on set and get to play. We get to play for a living. We get to pretend. And anything that stops you from playing is not good. Get rid of it. You know, some specific technique, or I've got to do it this way. If it stops you, get rid of it. It's not helping. You want something that lets you play. And I found myself, I was never very good at playing as a child. And I certainly wasn't very good at playing as a young actor. And I've gotten younger as I've gotten older. So it's allowed me, you know, my favorite quote is George Bernard Shaw said, "Every stroke of genius is a lucky misreckoning." So I love the happy accidents. And they can happen if you play. So I just like going in the morning and seeing who I get to play with on that given day. And hope for a little variety. You know, I mean, but I'm serviceable as some sort of a law enforcement or a problem solver or something like that. But every now and again, something will come along that'll really rattle my cage. And that keeps you going. You know, I've had a couple of opportunities here lately with Dallas Buyers Club and Bates Motel, and, you know, to play people that were a little bit different. Certainly the character I did in Bates Motel is a very dangerous man, charming but dangerous. And then I got to, you know, turn around and play an LA. He's a career criminal in Bates Motel, and then I got to turn around a month later and play the lead LAPD detective that was chasing the longest operating serial killer in the history of California. And so I mean, we get to wear different hats. I would be a disaster in life if I didn't get to change hats. I really would. I don't have the focus or the, you know. My emotional IQ is pretty high. I don't know what my intelligence IQ is. So if that's what I had to apply, I have great respect for those people. I don't know how they do it, but it's not Michael O'Neill, you know. So I just got lucky to be doing this.
Do you think that over time there comes, and I want to say this in the right way, and it's not really, you don't take things as seriously. Maybe not that, you know, you show up prepared, you have the lines down, you're there early before most people are there, but maybe the competitive part, or there's something where you let go and you question, okay, why am I doing this? And then you're able to do it for you?
Yeah, you know, and that may go back to the big dream and the little dream, the big one having to die, what you think it's supposed to look like, as opposed to what it does look like. You know, and I do think you season into it. You season into a relaxation. That's what I work on all the time now. I'm trying to relax. I'm trying to relax, and I'm trying to maintain concentration. It's harder to learn lines. And so I want to make sure that that's not what I'm thinking about the whole time. Is, oh my God, what's my next line? I don't want to listen to him. I got to figure out what my next line is. So there is some of that. You know, you just got to relax with it more. Look, I've never seen any job coming. I mean, that's the other remarkable aspect of what we do. You can't see it coming. I didn't know, and still don't. I don't know what my next job is. Sadly, I don't know that there'll be a next job. What I do know is that my job is to show up. That's the actor's job. I mean, you show up prepared, you show up and try to do the best you can, but you got to show up. And it's funny, I kind of learned that watching that audition that I was talking about, to see those actors come in and not want the job. They were there, but they didn't show up. And I take nothing away from them. I don't mean to be critical of them about that, because I've done the same thing. I've been on auditions where I didn't show up. I didn't really want that. I was afraid of that. And I think the proudest moments I've had is when I was really afraid and I did it anyway. You know, I don't think there's much courage without fear. And it's a fearful thing to go in and have to be evaluated all the time. You know, it's not like they're evaluating my jacket, it's me. I'm the quote unquote product. And if they reject, it's me. And so it helped me to have a family. It really helped me to have a family, because my kids, when I came home, you know, when I hit the front door, Dad's home, and can you spin us around? Can you do that thing you do, you know? And they didn't care whether the audition had gone well or not, or if the job had gone well or not. That probably saved me at a critical time in my quote-unquote career. If I may, it's probably an apocryphal story, but there was a story that I heard from an old character actor there were two young actors that were sitting at the commissary at Warner Brothers, and one was talking to the other about, I don't know if I should take this job. I don't know if it's good for my career. You know, I look at it and I think, well, there's but I don't really know if it's good for my career. And there was an old character actor sitting at the table next to him, and he leaned over and he says, "Excuse me, guys, I don't really do this, but if I may just say, you don't have a career. You have a job, and you'll get another job, and then you try to get another job, and then a job after that, and you keep doing that, and then at the end of it, you look back on a career." And that hit me. I mean, I have a career now, but it's in retrospect. I'm still going about getting that job. Let's get that job. Let's solve that problem. Let's find that character. Let's see what we can contribute. Where can we take some of the weight off of the guy who's having to carry this film on his shoulders? That's my job. And I hope they keep hiring me, because I like that job.
So you've mentioned before about the big dream and the little dream, and I think that's really an interesting thought, and I'm thinking about that for my own life. But in terms of an actor's type, you've said before that you have a type, and you play a lawman or something similar, you know. What if an actor isn't necessarily happy with their type, and they've come to this city with a big dream of who they think their type should be, but that's not what the audience tells them or casting director tells them?
That's a really hard question, and the reason it's hard is because you have to so believe in what you are, or at least be willing to withstand the struggle of that. So I would hate to say, you know, reinvent yourself into a new type, because what their great gift is, we might not see. When you first said that, my first inclination was go back to New York and get on the stage, where you have the room to create whatever type your instincts take you to. You know, when Dustin Hoffman did Midnight Cowboy, they thought he was playing Joe Buck, his friends. "Oh wow, you took that role, Joe Buck." He says, "No, I'm playing Ratso Rizzo." "What?" Yeah, I'm walking here. I'm walking. You know, sorry, Dustin, that's not a very good imitation, but he chose something that so stretched him in another direction that, and you know, he's an extraordinary character man, but they would have pigeonholed him. It's the nature of things. You know, there's a tremendous amount of risk that exists in our business at every level. Making a film, financing a film, being in a film, distributing a film, reviewing a film. Does the film get legs? Does it not get legs? There's just a tremendous amount of risk. So there's a default switch or an escape where people try to reduce risk. You know, they do it with me. I get hired, I think, a lot of times because they go, "Oh, Neil can do that." You know, it's not always the most compelling role that I'm going to do, but it's going to pay the mortgage. So in response to that question, look, you can study, you can reinvent, you can figure out a way, and I think people do that through the course of their careers to show another facet of the diamond. Oh, they've seen this, let's try to show them this, you know. But if it's a question of going and exploring what that type is, I would say go to New York and get on the stage and just work and build a community and embrace them, and the business will find you. I hope I'm not giving bad advice there.
How does someone, though, find their type? Is that through a casting director telling them, their agent?
It's usually what you get cast at. You know, there's an old saying, they won't cast you for what you can't do. They'll always cast you for what you can do. And so some of those early roles, they see something and go, "Oh yeah, and so there's the opportunity. Now with the opportunity also comes the beginnings of the bottleneck narrowing. So for yourself, if you don't want the bottleneck to be very narrow, then outside of the business you have to stretch into other characters. You have to do that at home, or do it in an acting class, or do it on the stage, so that you keep that thread taut. Because what tends to happen is that once you're in, and they've sort of decided, okay, this is what you're reliable at, you can lose your connection and affinity and wherewithal for that stuff. So I would say you got to be kind of mindful and vigilant to keep that up.